Having triumphed on the roads, it's full speed ahead for the rail division. And they're flying high at London Southend Airport too.
There was a time when seeing an Eddie Stobart lorry on the motorway felt like spotting an old friend. The green and red, the iconic white cab fronts, the crisp Stobart name painted proudly across the trailer. It wasn't just a fleet, it was a part of British culture. Kids waved from car windows, fans collected membership cards and ticked off names. Stobart drivers were seen as professionals, a cut above the rest. But that clean image, reliable, respectable, recognizable, would slowly be gutted from the inside out. And the cause? Not foreign competition, not fuel prices, not driver shortages, but private equity. To understand the collapse, you've got to go back to the 1990s. Eddie Stobart, the man himself, had handed the reins over to his son, Edward. The company was still family-run and still tightly focused on the core values that had made it famous: punctuality, appearance, and pride. Trucks were cleaned daily, drivers wore uniforms. The whole operation was run with a military-like precision that gave customers confidence and kept competitors guessing. But it was more than logistics, it was branding. Eddie Stobart had become a household name, almost mythologized in the way no other haulage firm ever was. And then came the suits. In 2003, Edward Stobart sold his controlling stake in the business. On the surface, it seemed like a smart move, bringing in financial muscle to help the brand grow even bigger. But the minute private equity got involved, the game changed. Slick presentations replaced gut instinct. Value was no longer measured in loyalty or legacy, but in margins and multipliers. The goal wasn't to build the best haulage company in Britain, it was to flip it for profit. First came the restructure. The transport side was merged with Westbury Property Fund, forming the Stobart Group. That's when it got weird. Suddenly Stobart was in the airport business, then rail, then biomass. Bits of the original company were hived off and sold. The transport division became just one piece of a bloated, tangled web of ventures that had nothing to do with haulage. But the trucks still rolled and the public still waved. They didn't see the chaos unfolding behind the windscreen. Drivers, though, they saw it, they lived it. What used to be a respected role began to feel like a revolving door. Pay was squeezed, hours got longer, promises were made, then quietly walked back. Morale dropped. Veterans who'd been proud to wear the uniform started handing in keys, and the new generation, they didn't stick around. Some routes were outsourced, others automated, training budgets shrank. Management, now in shiny offices far from any depot, treated the drivers like replaceable parts in a spreadsheet, and with that, the heart of the company started to rot. Meanwhile, the brand was being milked. Eddie Stobart's name, once a symbol of respect on the road, was slapped onto everything from model trucks to rail services. A fan club was launched. Supermarkets stocked Eddie Stobart DVDs. The lorries were still named after women: Lisa Marie, Deborah Jane, but it all felt like lipstick on a corpse. The focus wasn't on running a world-class logistics operation, it was on monetizing nostalgia. By the mid-2010s, things were coming undone. Debt was mounting. The structure of the business had become so convoluted that even analysts had trouble explaining it. In 2019, Eddie Stobart Logistics was suspended from trading on the stock market. Accounting issues emerged. Profits didn't look right. Executives left. Shares tanked. And who stepped in to save it? Not the Stobart family, not the drivers, but yet another private equity firm, DBAY Advisors, who took control with a 51% stake. Let that sink in. The company that had once set the gold standard for British haulage was now being passed around like a busted sat-nav, and every time a new group of investors got their hands on it, the cuts came sharper. Assets were sold off, staff trimmed, the business kept getting thinner and thinner until there was barely anything left to hold. The worst part? This wasn't a one-off. It followed a pattern seen across British industry. Family businesses, built over generations, scooped up by private equity, gutted for short-term profit, and dumped when the numbers no longer added up. And while the accountants walked away with bonuses, the drivers were left in the laybys, wondering where it all went wrong. By the time DBAY Advisors stepped in to rescue the company in 2019, what they inherited was barely recognizable as the proud haulier it once was. The iconic brand had been picked apart so many times it was more patchwork than powerhouse. Drivers, who used to take pride in pulling on the Stobart uniform, were now seen as a cost center to be trimmed wherever possible. Routes were cut, maintenance standards dipped, and the sparkle that once set an Eddie Stobart lorry apart on a rainy British motorway, it had faded. But the branding machine didn't stop. The fan club kept selling mugs and calendars. Documentaries still showed clean depots and smiling drivers. But behind that slick image was a workforce stretched to its limits. Drivers clocked brutal hours, expected to meet deadlines with less support and fewer breaks. Many spoke of broken promises, better conditions, more manageable shifts, or new kit that never came. Reputations built over decades were quietly eroding with every missed service and every resigning veteran. And yet, the company still made headlines, not for innovation, not for expansion, but for financial uncertainty. In 2020, reports revealed Eddie Stobart had lost millions and was facing significant financial instability. It was a cycle. New owners would step in, trim costs, sell off what they could, and try to ride the name into another cash out. But the longer it went on, the less value there was to extract. The human cost? That was immeasurable. Drivers felt disposable. Entire depot teams were thinned out, centralized, and pushed to handle workloads that once took double the manpower. Morale hit rock bottom. Where once the firm had queues of applicants, now recruitment lagged. Veteran hauliers left for smaller, independent outfits where their experience was valued, not spreadsheeted. And the irony in all this, Eddie Stobart's image was still used as a gold standard in haulage circles. Government ministers mentioned it, logistics awards referenced it. But inside the cab, the story was very different. The drivers still sitting behind the wheel of a Stobart liveried truck weren't smiling for the cameras anymore. They were tired, frustrated, and watching the legacy they once helped build fall apart one load at a time. One former driver summed it up perfectly. They took a brand that stood for pride and turned it into a logo you wear while being treated like dirt. That's the truth. It wasn't a slow decline. It was a forced dismantling, bit by bit, asset by asset, until only the paint job remained. And for those who remember the glory days, it's a bitter pill. This was a company where lorries were named after women, where drivers were trained to tip their caps to passing children, where standards mattered. You didn't just get a job at Eddie Stobart, you earned it. It was a career, not a gig. But private equity doesn't care about heritage. It cares about dividends, and the people who built the company, the drivers, mechanics, logistics managers, were treated as lines on a balance sheet, not the backbone of the operation. It didn't have to be this way. The Stobart name still had immense goodwill. The company could have doubled down on what made it great: reliability, customer service, smart logistics. But in chasing short-term profit, they stripped away the very soul of the business. Warehouses were leased back, equipment was cut to the bone, and any move that didn't directly boost the bottom line, it was ignored or scrapped. So where does that leave us now? In 2023, the remnants of Eddie Stobart still rolled down Britain's roads, but they weren't the same. Outsourced, renamed, operated by shell companies with licensing deals. The trucks wore the livery, but the spirit was gone. The camaraderie, the driver pride, the connection to the public, it was all lost in the buyouts, restructures, and boardroom reshuffles. Eddie Stobart as a name still exists, but Eddie Stobart as a company, as a legacy, as a family is gone. Swallowed by boardroom deals and private equity firms who saw a famous badge and wondered how fast they could cash it in. In the end, it wasn't competition that killed Eddie Stobart. It wasn't Brexit or fuel prices or regulation. It was greed, pure, calculated, spreadsheet-driven greed. And what hurts most, the people who wrecked it will move on to their next venture. But the drivers, the ones still out there, doing long shifts in trucks that look like they belong to a proud tradition, they'll carry the weight of what's been lost. They remember what this company used to stand for, and they know exactly who destroyed it.